Damien ruins horror movies.
Cover your mouth, please.
Fuck off, lady. It's time for another episode of Damien Ruins Horror Movies. Hi, it's me, Damien. Tonight is a special pick. It's a movie I bought. I actually bought this movie a long time ago. I used to buy a bunch of DVDs at a time, and I'd watch some of them, and then I'd get around to the rest of them later. I have a lot of DVDs that I own that I've never watched, and some of them I don't even have any interest in watching them. But this movie I found sitting on my shelf as I blew the dust off of it, and I was reading it, and I thought, you know what? This movie is perfect. Because even though technically it's a thriller, but based on what's going on in the world right now and what our lives have turned into the last few months, this is a fucking horror movie. And this is the movie that, if you're a conspiracy theorist, it'd be really easy to look at this movie and be like, wow, somebody in charge watched this movie and thought, I got an idea, because this movie mirrors what's going on so closely that it's crazy, the parallels between the two. To the point, and normally I don't look at reviews before I do my own review, but I was on IMDb and I was just kind of, I don't know, just kind of looking. But there's so many reviews. For a movie that came out in 2011, there's a lot from like the last month for this movie. And with good reason, because this movie is pretty it's eerily close to reality. And I wish I knew, since I own it, that's how I watched it. I don't know how you can watch it. You can, I don't know, be resourceful, figure it out. I don't know. I wish I could say, go, it's on Netflix. I don't know why networks, because I know Tubi has done this thing where they have a lot of like zombie epidemic type movies. Like all their horror. If you go to horror, it's like all that sort of thing. So it's like, how has everybody skipped this movie? So it begins with this woman named Beth. She's played by Gwyneth Paltrow. She's in a restaurant. She gets a phone call. She is on a business trip to Hong Kong. And the opening scene, it says day, like the header's opening scene is like day 2. We've skipped day 1. Day 2, she's in a restaurant, and it's kind of confusing looking back. And maybe if I watched it again, maybe it'd make more sense. Maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. But it seems like they kind of, because she goes from like, she gets a phone call from a dude, John Neal. He's like an ex-boyfriend. He lives in Chicago. She had a layover in Chicago, where he lives. She does not live in Chicago. She's flying to Hong Kong. I don't know where she's flying from, but she stops in Chicago. And apparently she thinks layover means get laid, because she is married to somebody not named John Neal. And she's in a restaurant. He calls her. She's like, sorry to run out on you without saying goodbye. I was in a rush. Then she like flies to Hong Kong. I guess the confusing part is, because I don't know if the next header was actually day 3, but it seems like she flies to Hong Kong. It's an 18-hour. If I flew to Hong Kong, it would take me at least 18 hours to get there. And that's without stopping off to get laid somewhere. That's just like pretty much a straight flight. It's going to take 18 hours. So it's like, how does she go? And then she's like in Hong Kong for like 10 minutes, gets on another plane, and goes back home to her loving husband, Mitch, Matt Damon, and her son from a previous marriage. I don't know if that's John Neal's kid. I don't think it is, but it's definitely not Mitch's kid. And she goes home to them. It's like, but it's like, how did you fly round trip to Hong Kong in like one day? But I guess we didn't see day 1, so maybe, I don't know. That part's kind of out of whack. The continuity of that's like, so you sure went to Hong Kong and back in a hurry. Like the meeting was shorter than your little love affair. But after she had left the restaurant, some reason there's a big importance on this restaurant, but when she's leaving that restaurant, she has a cough. And I feel bad if I'm fucking this up, but I swear she has the cough before she goes to Hong Kong. And kind of the premise of this is that she got it in Hong Kong, which is weird. In real life, it happened in China. In this movie, it happened in Hong Kong. After the meal, it gets kind of weird. Like the movie's good, it makes sense, but this like continuity and just this first part, while you're watching it, makes perfect sense. Looking back on it, it's kind of like, well, what the hell? How did that happen? Because then they show like this montage of people getting sick everywhere and all this other stuff happening, because there's no like definite main character in this movie. There's a few main characters that I'm going to introduce, but because it's kind of showing, if you've seen the movie Traffic, same director, Steven Soderbergh. Did I not say the name of this movie? God damn it. The movie's called Contagion. Steve Soderbergh's the director. And he did the movie Traffic. He does have a tendency to kind of, based on these two movies I've seen, he goes all in. He's like, blah. It's not like, this is what racism looks like. It's like, this is what, it's like this all or nothing. It's like, this is how, I don't know, like if something's kind of fucked up, he makes it really fucked up. To the point where, if I had watched this movie in 2011, I would have been like, what? God, what's up with this dude? Why does he have to like go like all the way? It's like, that's never going to happen. But now watching it now, it's kind of like, wow, this guy nailed it. This is kind of, I mean, other than the way they die, that's different, but. So then we meet Dr. Ellis Cheevers, Lawrence Fishburne. I'm not going to say their names anymore because I'll probably am planning to put pictures up, so I don't need to tell you who plays who. We meet him briefly, and then we meet journalist Alan Crumwide, played by Jude Law. I mean, I'm going to say his name because I haven't seen a lot of Jude Law movies, but somehow that guy always plays a prick. Like, if you haven't seen I Heart Huckabees, go watch that. I don't know, there's something about his face. I don't know if he's like typecast where like, we need a prick for this movie. Ah, I know, Jude Law. He's like this generation's David Spader. He just has that kind of, he doesn't quite have that same evil about him that David Spader had. I think that's his name, right? David Spader from all the 80s. He's like the bad guy in all the 80s high school movies. But he's more like kind of this kind of dumb dickhead. Whereas like, I don't know, but it's no different. In this movie, he's a journalist and he's trying to tell the story. He's like, it's pretty much, it's not even that this movie's like making the media look bad. They're like showing that kind of like, oh, I'm going to get to the truth, the cutthroat world of journalism. But it's just one journalist, and he's just like, just pissing everybody off, basically. Mitch goes to pick up Beth's kid, Clark, from school. And when he gets home, I have no idea what day it is yet, Beth like has a seizure and just starts foaming at the mouth and collapses. So he takes her to the hospital and she dies. The doctor tells him, like, oh yeah, she's dead and blah, blah. We don't know why. And it was kind of a funny part because the doctor, I swear he like mentions syphilis. He didn't actually say syphilis. He used like a derivative, it sounded like, of syphilis. And then later he's like, says, oh, yeah, but it could have been herpes. And finally Mitch snapped. He's like, she didn't have herpes, okay? She wasn't like that. But then it's fucked up because she was like that. You know, she stops in Chicago and sleeps with guys. Or, you know, she knew him, but whatever. But she's dead, and he's kind of in denial because the doctor just tells her, yeah, she's dead. Sorry. Do you need a grievance counselor or whatever? And he's like, oh, okay. Well, can I talk to her? They're like, huh? No. I mean, you could, but she's not going to talk back. She's fucking dead. Dead. But day 5. So somewhere between day 2 and day 5, Beth went to Hong Kong and died. Not in Hong Kong, obviously. which takes us to the World Health Organization, the WHO. This is where we meet Dr. Erin Mears, and she meets Dr. Cheever. And basically the initial plan, this is going to sound very familiar to you if you're watching this close to when I put it out. The plan is to isolate the sick and quarantine those with symptoms. I'm not sure what the difference between isolating and quarantining is, but it's familiar ground based on life lately. Oh, I forgot to mention, Clark died too. So now Mitch, his wife and stepkid, dead. Mitch is fine, but he's basically being quarantined in the hospital. A little girl, a teenage girl, she is, well, based on how the movie ends, she's a senior. She goes kind of a long way, and she visits him in the hospital, and she's like, Dad, I love you, and blah, 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 are you okay? And she's like, I want to stay with you. He's like, you need to stay with your mom and your stepdad. And she's like, I don't want to stay with them. They have each other. You're all alone. Because she knows like what he just went through, and she feels terrible for him. And she's like, they're fine. They don't need me. You're all by yourself. I want to be with you. But which is like the worst thing, because like, well, I'm quarantined for a reason. I don't know where she goes after that, because she doesn't stay in the hospital with him, but she does stay with him. So I don't know. They don't show that. That's what's good about this movie, is like as slow, because the movie, it's not that the movie's slow paced, it just had, the pace of it is just weird while you're watching it, because you're watching, there's a lot of characters. You got Matt Damon's characters here, and you got Cheever is here. They don't really intersect. Jude Law, he's over here. I mean, you got five characters. There's not really one main person, because it's telling a bigger story. So it's not like, this is what happened to Matt Damon when the coronavirus broke out. It's not that simple. It's like, it's doing like an overview type thing. So Dr. Erin meets up with a group of other doctors and explains the virus is respiratory. The average person touches their face 2,000 to 3,000 times a day, 3 to 5 times a minute. I don't know if that's true. Have I touched my face in this video yet? Maybe. Or maybe I edited it out. In between touching our face, we're touching doorknobs and shit that other people have touched too, and we're getting germs in our face. And that's how germs enter our body, through our mouth, eyes, and nose. They're worried about spreading the word too much because they don't want healthy people to panic. Because swine flu does exist in this movie. I think the swine flu inspired this movie. But people have fomites. They have particles that come out of their mouth and spread germs. It's airborne. So not only can you touch something that somebody touched and get it, but you can also spit, vapor. The mist. Fomites can come out of your mouth and get into somebody else's mouth, and then they got it, and you're contagious before you even know that you have it, before you even show symptoms. The incubation period in this movie, I'm not sure, but they did have a social distancing distance of 10 feet instead of 6. I thought that was interesting. Day 7. Homeland Security is now involved. Dennis French and Lyle Haggerty get together with Dr. Cheever to discuss the idea, to discuss the virus, but the idea of like, what if it's a terrorist threat? Which is kind of funny, because that shows how far we've come since 2011. In 2011, it's like, well, maybe it's a terrorist, because it's not, 10 years before this, it was anthrax. Chemical warfare was a big theme for the first 10 years of the 2000s. I hate not knowing how to explain, I like being able to say in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 70s. I don't like them. I'll never get used to saying in the zeros, but in the zeros, chemical warfare in the 80s. God damn it. But in the zeros, chemical warfare for at least the first few years after 9/11 was it was a real thing. It was a real concern. It was so much of a concern that the band Anthrax, I think they broke up instead before it had to happen. But they wanted them to change their name. They did get rid of Anthrax Street in, I don't remember where Anthrax Street was. It's on the East Coast. They got rid of it. It's close enough to New York that people were like, fuck you guys. And it's like, dude, we've been around since 80-3. How are we supposed to know? So we go from terrorist chemical warfare to, I think it's a conspiracy and the government's lying. Like today we're like, well, I think it's the government. It's political. It's the left trying to do this and trying to do that, trying to make us wear masks. I mean, it is kind of like this funny thing where, not funny, but it is kind of this thing where it's like, if you were to plot, because you can't just necessarily get people to admit their beliefs on things. So if you're like, fuck, I want to kill all the people on the right, but I don't know who's on the right. And I don't know how to get people to admit, honestly, if they're on the right. Or if you want to kill everybody on the left. But you could, no, you couldn't, but if you started a fake virus like this, like to this point where like you can walk into a grocery store now and you can pretty much be assured everybody with a mask is on the left and everybody not wearing a mask is on the right. And there's no like simpler way to show what colors the people are showing. It's like, oh, you voted for Trump. You voted for Hillary. It's like as plain as day. It's like this is like your voting bracelet. So if you were like, I'm not gonna get into that. I don't want to try and inspire people to. We're gonna get back to the movie now, okay? The doctor questions Mitch more about his dead wife and her flights. You know, it's like, okay, she stopped in Chicago at this time because her layovers. Then she was in Minneapolis at this time. At no point was the doctor like just blown away by it. It's like, how did she get to Hong Kong and back so fast? But the doctor does kind of spell it out to her. It's like, well, she knows this guy in Chicago. I don't know how the doctor, maybe it wasn't the doctor having this conversation with him, now that I think about it. I was like, why is the doctor like, the doctor has figured out, like, hey, did you know your wife was cheating on you? Did you know she had an affair that day? Well, a couple days before she died? That would be weird for the doctor to do it. So maybe it wasn't the doctor. But somebody is talking to him and explaining, like, okay, there's layers. Like, do you know if your wife left the airport? And he's like, I don't know. It's like, do you know anybody in Chicago? And, like, Mitch knows, like, well, fucking John Neal lives there, but, and then slowly he's like, yeah, like, it couldn't be any worse. Like, all right, my wife's dead. Our stepson, luckily it's only a stepson, so yeah, who gives a shit? Yeah. No, I mean, compared to like, because he has a real daughter, like a daughter that's his. I don't know how long he's been married to Beth. Obviously, that kid was what, like 8? So he couldn't have been married to her for more than 7 years. And it probably was more like 3 years. So I don't know, but that would suck. But then on top of that, it's like, oh, by the way, she was cheating on you too, like right before she died. Like she might have got it. She might as well have got AIDS in that hotel and died the next day from it. That's how bad she was cheating on you. But finding out that, oh yeah, she's dead. Oh, and you know that wholesome memory you have of her and her character and how saddened you are because she's a sweet person to believe. She was cheating on you right before she died. Practically during sex with another guy, she died. That's what the doctor said, or whoever that guy was. Elsewhere, Dr. Cheever and Dr. Alley, who has not been introduced yet, are looking at the virus through a computer. And they find that it's like a pig / this is the unbelievable part, bat combination. That's where this virus is coming from. And now they have to find, well, they want to find patient 0. I don't know how they're going to figure out who patient 0 is, but that's what they're looking at now. Also, they need to make a replica virus in order to make a vaccine, and they need something to experiment on. I like how I can watch this movie and take notes on it, and then all of a sudden I sound like I'm some kind of expert on the coronavirus when honestly I don't know shit. Okay, I know whatever you know, I know less than that. But I watched this movie, and this movie knows more about it than I do. Or anybody. I don't know. Day 12, Dr. Seussman has successfully grown the virus from, wait for it, bats. Thus making phase 1 over, phase 2 begins. Now we start working on the vaccine, which could take months. Day 14, Dr. Schmear has a cough. Symptoms: can't swallow, headache, and a fever. She's gotta have more cowbell. Meanwhile, old Alan Crumwide, Alyan Crumaweta. Meanwhile, Jude Law is working on his own vaccine based on the knowledge he gained from his journalism degree. And he's vlogging about it like a douche. Actually, like me right now. Day 18. Panic has already set in. Resources are getting low, store shelves are clearing, and everyone's trying to leave town. But your state's quarantined, so you can't leave the state. Everybody, that traffic jam it took you a million years to get to the front of is now telling you to turn around. So people do. And Mitch was one of those people that was trying to leave town with his daughter. Alan is out and about spreading around conspiracy flyers. Because at the end of the day, Alan's got a story to sell. Not tell, sell. And Alan's agenda is weird because this movie doesn't get too political. Because now if they made this movie, Alan would be clearly left or right. But in this one, he's just this guy who's just completely out for himself. And he's trying to profit and benefit off of this pandemic as much as he can. Whereas now, if they made the movie, it would be a journalist on the left or on the right who's trying to spin it into a certain direction where it profits the party rather than profits themselves financially. So there's a difference between now and then. But it works because Alan gets himself all the way onto a talk show where he gets to debate Dr. Cheever. And they go live, and Dr. Cheever is not expecting, I don't know, it's like he's not expecting a debate. He's expecting to explain his knowledge on what's going on. He's not expecting to be dragged through the dirt because Dr. Cheevers is seeing a woman, I think she has a kid, and he did tell her information that he is not allowed to tell her. And he pretty much said, hey, right now is the time. If you're going to leave town, go now. Drop what you're doing. I think she was in the store when he called her. He's like, drop what you're doing, get all your stuff that you need, and get out right now. Which, you're not allowed to do that. Because that's classified information, apparently. And so somehow good old Alan is privy to that. I have no idea how. I guess because he's a good journalist. So he's ready to drag old Cheevers through the mud. And they start debating. But before the debate, it's kind of weird and interesting because Dr. Cheevers does say, I forget the sentence he said, but he actually used the term, which I've never heard until 2 months ago. But he actually uses the term social distancing. He's like, well, we want to keep social distancing. I think that's when he says like 10 feet away, because in this movie it's 10 feet away, not 6 feet away. But he's like, well, we want to keep social distancing and keep 10 feet away from each other. And it's like, that is so weird. The parallels in this movie are fucking crazy. Like all the way down to the fucking terminology and the advice, even the stupid advice. Well, if you're sick, stay home. But it's like all that stuff that we've been hearing the last few months was in this movie 9 years ago. It's crazy. It's like, huh? What is going on? Like, are we living in this movie? Alan thinks that his conspiracy theory is that the pharmaceutical companies that are going to like make the vaccine for this, they're all in it for profit, and they're in bed with even like big government and other rich bitches, and the whole thing is like some kind of money scheme where it's like, well, we're going to use this opportunity to make a vaccine that people will have to buy, and we're all going to get rich. Like, why he thinks that, I don't know. And then he exposes on air Dr. Cheevers for telling his girlfriend that now would be a good time to leave because you can't do that. That's unethical. So now, after it's all over, like nobody really won the debate. Because this is the kind of stupid thing where it's like, okay, we're not helping each other in this situation. Like Dr. Cheevers is actually a good dude who's like trying to help humanity. And Alan is this fucking asshole who's trying to help himself at whatever cost. And so after that, like Cheevers gets talked to, and they're like, you're going to be under investigation. They're going to try and prove whether or not that's true. And if it is, you could be in big trouble. The only thing Cheevers has going for him, though, is he's like the closest thing to an expert they have on this virus. So they're kind of like, well, yeah, when this is over, if we get out of this, you're going to jail. It's like, so everybody's in kind of, it would have just been better off if nobody ever knew that he did that. Because I mean, fuck, you should get, if you're trying to save humanity and you play favorites a little bit, you should get a pass. Like, come on. Like, yes, I'm gonna save my kid first. Fuck you. You know, it's like humanity comes second. It's a close second, maybe. It's a close second, maybe, but come on, who are you gonna save first? Your loved ones or just a billion strangers? Day 21, it mutated. They figured out how to duplicate it, but all they were left with was a bunch of dead monkeys. Day 26. I feel like Matt Damon has been wearing the same clothes since day 2. The death toll is at 2.5 million. Mitch's daughter goes to sleep and he hears gunshots from the apartment across the street. I think it's an apartment. That's scary, having your kid. When it's just you and your daughter, anything bad happening, just sucks. But he hears the gunshots and he's like, oh, somehow she didn't hear him. She was asleep. But he calls the cops and he gets this recording saying, due to the amount of calls that we've had, we are unable to help you right now. And so basically you need to go fuck yourself because other people have troubles too. And everybody's having troubles all at once. So we can't be there. So basically there's no law right now, which is a fear that we're having in real life right now. Another parallel. Damn. In the morning, Jory, that's his daughter's weird name, and her boyfriend Andrew are making snow angels in the ground. And then Andrew rolls over and gets on top of Jory and tries to make out with her. And she's kind of like, nah, not because she doesn't, not into him, but it's like, social distancing. And just then a good old Born Identity comes out like, what the fuck? Get out of here! Cheever talks to another doctor about how close they are to a vaccine. But there's so many steps involved, even if they had one. Homeland Security wants to put the non-existent vaccine into the water supply, like fluoride, and just cure everybody at once. How's that for free healthcare? Huh? Meanwhile, Dr. Allie is tired of killing monkeys, and she decides, fuck it, I'm going all in. And she shoots herself in the ass with the vaccine she came up with. Actually, I think she shot herself in the ass with the virus. And she's like, all right, shit just got real. Because now she's going to do it on herself, which was, I don't know, brave, but not necessarily smart. You can be brave and stupid, right? In fact, most brave people are stupid. Yeah, I said it. What? Then we take a big old jump. Either that or I wrote this down wrong, but we're on day 131. And people are kind of going crazy. It's like a full-on purge. People are not only robbing each other so they can purchase the vaccine, they're also stealing the vaccine so they can sell the vaccine. Like, the vaccine is gold right now. And good old Alan's plan is to urge people not to take it. Huh? But he has a little meeting with, I don't know if it's a friend. Oh, Maybe it was a friend. I don't know. People like Alan don't really have friends, though. That's what happens when you're just when you're only out for yourself. You don't really have friends. You're just kind of you're a shitty person. When you're a shitty person, most people don't like you. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of shitty people that people love. I love him. I love you, Michael Bisping. Not saying Bisping's a shitty person. But his friend double crosses him. He's wearing a wire. And I don't know, a SWAT team comes out and they bust him. And now he's in deep shit. Because he's basically admitted that he's telling, with no evidence to why, no scientific proof on why it's bad or anything. He's basically telling people not to take it so that they'll die. He's just not using those words. But the result would be, if they don't take it, they'll die. While at the same time, they're having a vaccine lottery where, it's the little balls shoot up and they call them, they spin it, except there's only 2 balls. One for the day, one for the month. And if you're born on March 4th, doesn't matter what year, everybody born on March 4th, get on down to the vaccination because that's who's next. And then the next day they do another one. Oh, December 13th, get on down if you're there. And that's how they try and control, because they can't just, we got the vaccine, we're gonna give it to everybody at once. And it's a weird thing, it looks like a nasal spray. It looks like a needle nasal spray. It's weird looking. Mitch's daughter's birthday comes up, and just in time for prom, she gets vaccinated, and she asks the great question. She says, what happens next winter when this comes back and we all start all over again? And he says what every parent says in that situation. I don't fucking know. Do you want this or not? And so she's all good, and school's still not open back up. He decorates a living room like a prom evening and invites Andrew over. And he goes to get his digital camera. It's his wife's digital camera. And so he finds it. He's like, yes, I still got it. And somehow I haven't seen it in a year, but it's still fully charged. And he starts looking at pictures on it. And they're pictures of old Beth. They're actually pictures of Beth in the restaurant from the opening of the movie. But he sees her face because he hasn't really seen her in a long time, because she's been dead and he's been busy. And he starts crying like a little bitch. And then he has the little party for his daughter. And then we go to our final scene. The spoiler alert scene, or the spoiler scene, it shows a pig farm. It's like a big steel house with a bunch of pigs inside that they're raising. They're raising the pigs for the purpose of eating the pigs, but they're little baby pigs. And a bat flies in and flies up, and it hangs upside down, and it just starts shitting all over the place. And the pigs are just like, bat shit good. And they start eating it up. And then it shows the pigs getting shipped off and processed. And then eventually, this is the weird part, because it looks like it shows it gets processed and it goes and it makes it all the way to the restaurant that Beth is in at the beginning of the movie. And the header says, day 1. And it shows the pigs from that plant going into that restaurant, getting on her plate, and she eats it. But wasn't that supposed to start in Hong Kong? I don't think she was. I could swear she was in the restaurant and then she went to Hong Kong. The restaurant could have been in Hong Kong. Either way, what it alludes to is Beth was patient 0. But it's not her fault. I mean, what's your survival tip? Don't eat. Don't go out to dinner. But I don't know, it shows it. So that's the movie. The end. Find it. I wish I could tell you where to go to watch it, because it's long and it's kind of slow, but it is very eerily interesting. The end. The Badass Award goes to Allie for poking herself in the butt and martyring herself to find the vaccine. What do we learn? Survival tips. Social distancing. Wash your hands frequently. If you feel sick, stay home. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, or whatever you do when you like a video. Go to the Facebook page and you can like it there too. See you next time.